I'm Keith Barry. Yeah, I gotta fix everything. Throw that in the outtakes. And this is the all-new 2026 all-electric Lexus ES 500e. For years, the ES has been a favorite at Consumer Reports. It does really well in our road tests, it does great in owner satisfaction surveys, reliability surveys, but it's also just a comfortable cruiser that's great for road trips. But for 2026, the ES has been totally redesigned. The gas-only version is gone, there's a hybrid, and then there's this all-electric version, which is all new. Regardless of which powertrain you choose, it's going to be longer, it has a new look, and it's a lot more high-tech inside. This new ES starts at just under $49,000 for the base version and climbs all the way up to $60,000 or more if you get it fully equipped. That's a big jump from the old ES hybrid, which started around $44,000. And there's also some big differences between the models. If you spend a little, the car is very different than if you spend a lot, and not all of those changes are visible on the car itself. We also borrowed a luxury trim version from Lexus, and that one had a really nice interior with lighting accents and bamboo, and it felt really, really special inside. This one here is a premium trim. It's still very nice, but it's a little bit more Spartan. For the all-electric ES, there are a couple of powertrain choices too. So first you have to pick whether you want the single motor 350e, which is only front-wheel drive. It has 221 horsepower and an EPA estimated 307 miles of range. Or you can choose the dual motor 500e, like the one we bought, with all-wheel drive. It has a shorter range and it has more horsepower. And as is the case with every car that we test at Consumer Reports Auto Test Center, we sent a CR employee undercover to a local Lexus dealership to purchase this car anonymously for our test program. So we get the same car that you would buy if you were to purchase it. We bought the model that Lexus expects to sell the most of, and that's the ES 500e Premium All-Wheel Drive. The base price was $50,500. We got $2,095 worth of options. The destination fee was $1,395, which brought the total cost up to $53,990. The final assembly point for the ES is Fukuoka, Japan. Our ES 500e has 338 horsepower from dual electric motors and a 74.7 kilowatt-hour battery and a 276-mile range. The Lexus ES is the only sedan in Lexus's lineup. The LS, which used to be the flagship, which was larger, is gone. And as a result, Lexus stretched the ES by about 6.5 inches to make up for that difference and kind of have one car fill two roles. You'll find that it gives it this really nice, long, sleek look, and it gives you a ton of legroom in the back seat, which we'll talk about a little bit later. The overall look of the ES is a little sleeker, a little more modern than the predecessors. The chrome is gone. It's all been replaced by this shiny black, which some people call piano black, and it's this sort of mirrored look. It might not be to everyone's taste, but I see what Lexus is trying to do here. They're trying to bring the ES up to where some other vehicles are design-wise. If you look at it from the side, it's really reminiscent of the Toyota Crown, and it's no secret that the Crown and a bunch of other Toyota and Lexus vehicles share some of the same underlying design and technology. I think the new ES also looks a lot like a Tesla, and I don't think that's a coincidence. And speaking of Tesla, which we often are when we're talking EVs, if you press this button here, you'll see the ES comes with a Tesla-style NACS connector. That means you can plug it in at any Tesla supercharger. It also comes with this converter here, which comes free with the car, that allows you to plug in at a J1772 charger, and it also comes with a CCS adapter as well. Now, when you do plug in at a DC fast charging station, the ES has a little bit slower rate of charging than other EVs on the market. It can only charge at 150 kilowatts. So don't bother if you see a 350 kilowatt charger. Don't bother plugging in. You're just going to get a charge at the same speed as if you were at the 151. But in real life, usage, we found that it doesn't seem to matter that much. Lexus says that fast charging from 10% to 80% can take about 28 minutes. It can add up to about 8.4 miles per minute, which is about the same as the BMW i5. At a level 2 charger, like the one you'd use at home, the ES can charge at up to 11 kilowatts. It adds between 26 and 37 miles of range per hour of charging, depending upon your power setup at home, and that is more competitive. Also, the ES does not have a frunk. There is no storage space or front trunk here. And that's likely because it shares a platform with some vehicles that aren't EVs, so there's already stuff up here. But, it does mean that you have a little bit less storage space than you would in some other EVs that have a place for storing things up here. Now, in the back of the vehicle, you'll find a pretty spacious trunk here. Even though it looks like a hatchback, it is a traditional sedan design. So you have your trunk here. The trunk space itself is fairly big. If you open it up here, you'll find charging cord and space for your adapters. There is no spare tire. You instead have a tow hook here, you have a puncture repair kit, and that's all. One thing that is also different about the Lexus ES that's always been the case with the ES is that the rear seats don't fold down all the way. So if you go to IKEA and buy some big bookcase, take a different vehicle, it's not going to fit in here. There is a small pass-through for, shorter items like skis, but it's not going to fit a larger box. You just can't do that, and you never have been able to in the ES. Like a lot of other Lexuses, the ES has electronic door handles. You put your hand under and you squeeze, and there's an electronic pad, and it releases the door. If you want to lock it, you press next to these 3 little lines right there. There is a manual release for getting into the vehicle, if the battery is dead or something, but it's pretty involved. So it's not something you can do super easily. It's one of those things where you have to get out your owner's manual and figure out exactly what's the case. So it's less for use in an emergency and, more for if your battery dies. At Consumer Reports, we have a bunch of people of all heights and sizes and shapes and abilities who get in and out of these vehicles. But almost everyone has had good things to say about the ES. There's a nice floor here that's not too low, which makes it a little easier to step in. You're not really stepping down. The height of the vehicle overall is a little higher than most sedans. You're driving a little more upright than most sedans with a little more view of the road. And it's the same thing in the back seat too. You got a ton of leg room, which gives you a lot of space to step in and sit down as well. And it's just very, very easy to get in and out of. Another nice thing about the ES is visibility. It can be kind of hard to see in a lot of modern cars. But in the ES, these pillars here up front, these A pillars, are actually angled so they're a little narrower, so you have really good visibility out the front and sides. The rear windows are pretty big, and there are those little small windows in the back. They give you a lot of visibility, which is surprisingly uncommon in modern cars. One complaint is that in a car that costs, this much, you don't get a surround view camera as standard equipment. But with this kind of visibility and, you do have parking sensors up front, it isn't that much of a problem. Like most new Lexuses, the ES has these digital latch door handles, and instead of pulling on them, you just kind of put your hand here and you press with your thumb. If you don't do it in one fluid motion, it gets stuck. There also is an emergency latch. If you put your finger behind it and pull it twice, the door opens manually. Now, it is easy to get used to once you own the car or once you've been driving it for a while, but if you're having a passenger for the first time who hasn't used it, you do need to give a little bit of a tutorial. And, at Consumer Reports, we think door handles should be one of the most intuitive parts of the car. Just how nice the interior looks depends on how much money you spend. In this premium trim, you do have lots of uninterrupted similar materials, but there are some nice accents. There's some chrome accents across here. You have some micro suede behind the instrument cluster, and you have some textured soft touch surfaces on the doors. It is a minimalist look. It is definitely more minimalist than the prior ES, but that seems to be the direction that cars are going, and this is a Lexus interpretation of that. You even have buttons here that look like they're touch buttons for the climate, but they're actually covered over real physical buttons. So when you press this, you can feel a button moving. It looks kind of cool. The only problem is that you can't differentiate these by touch while you're driving, but at least they're big enough that you only have to glance away for a second in order to make sure you get the right one. In addition to that minimalism, you're still going to get some of the Lexus hallmarks of just a real nice feel. The window regulators, they feel really nice, and the window slows down right before it closes. Everything clicks into place nicely. Sliding the cup holder cover open. Even the glove box, it doesn't just flop open, it moves really, really smoothly. Everything feels intentional. The controls in the ES are pretty good, especially for a luxury car where things tend to get pretty complex pretty quickly. You have a fairly standard style monostable shifter that you can operate by feel, and the other controls are at least large. So, the ES has the latest version of Lexus's infotainment system, and you'll see on this relatively big screen, you'll see big icons that are easy to find and press. There's a home screen here that you can get back to nice and easy. Navigation, audio, phone, all of these things seem to work well. Down here at the bottom, the fan controls are always there. It's always showing the climate. These options are always here. Would we prefer physical buttons? Yes, but at least the icons are very large and easy to see. You also have 2 USB-C chargers here up front, and on our vehicle, 1 wireless charger and 1 area to store stuff. You can also opt for 2 wireless chargers up front, and then your only storage would be underneath here, underneath the center console and inside the center console. Those are the only places for your change and things like that. One complaint that we do have is about actually connecting your phone, and everyone who's driven this car has had issues where they paired their phone and suddenly it won't work. You start the car, it won't connect to Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. We've tried both. We've tried multiple phones. And that seems to be an issue we found on more Toyota and Lexus vehicles these days. So we hope that that's something that can get resolved. The steering wheel controls are flush mounted, some of them, but they are distinguishable by touch. There are these little plastic ridges in between them that make them a little easier to control. And something that's kind of cool is Lexus has these hexagonal stalks on either side of the steering wheel. It's just an interesting look, and also it can let you know by feel if your lights are on auto, which is the best place to keep them so you don't drive around with your lights off. If you look at it, you'll be able to see that something is wrong. So it's a nice little extra feature, a little thoughtful feature that's been put into the vehicle. The seats are very comfortable, very well adjustable too. A lot of folks who have driven the car said that they like the wide variety of adjustments that they can get out of the seats. On our car, we have an optional feature, and it's something I've never seen before on a vehicle. It is a radiant heating element that is built into the base of the steering wheel. And when you turn it on, it heats your, knees and legs. We haven't had a ton of cold weather here yet while we've had the vehicle, but I imagine that it's going to get a lot of use when it gets colder outside. The gauge cluster doesn't seem to be blocked by the steering wheel, which happens in a lot of vehicles. It gives you little hints for your electric driving. It'll say if you turn off the fan, you can get 10 more miles of range. I don't know really who would do that unless you were hypermiling, but it shows you how many miles per kilowatt hour you're getting. It shows which of the advanced driving assistance features are turned on, and it also gives you a percentage and mileage left of range. But maybe the nicest place in the new ES is the back seat, and that's because there is just so much room back here. The legroom is really something else, especially in a sedan. There is plenty of headroom as well. I'm 5'10", and I've still got a bunch of space here, despite the fact that the roof does slope a little bit. And if we were to have paid a little extra and upgraded to the executive package, we could have even got a footrest that comes out here and reclining seats. But we didn't want people to be spending too much time testing those out. The first thing you'll notice when you're driving the ES is just how good the suspension is. It does a great job when you're going over bumps, just absorbing them, kind of quietly too. It's not too cushy of a suspension. It doesn't feel like a 1970s land yacht or anything. It just absorbs things. It's just very nicely absorbent, and it's exactly what you're looking for in a car like this, which, you know, is a road trip cruiser. The second thing you'll notice is the sound of silence. Lexus really took advantage of the fact that this is an all-electric car. There's no wind noise, no road noise. The powertrain, just the faintest bit of a little bit of a hum from the powertrain. Even the suspension, a little bit of a distant rumble like thunder occasionally over big bumps. It's one of the quietest vehicles I have ever been in. And really kudos to Lexus for figuring out how to make an electric car so quiet. When you get onto the highway, another thing you expect from an electric car is instant acceleration, and you do get that in the 500e, which is the dual motor version. It's refined, it doesn't pin you to the back of your seat, but it's in keeping with the character of the car. Now, the steering feel is a bit of an odd mix of sportiness and cushiness. You know, it does fit with the feel of the vehicle itself, but you know, we think it does keep the driver feeling a little too isolated from the road. And at the same time, the steering is a little bit too quick, which means that it doesn't take much effort to make the front wheels of the car turn. That is great for, you know, a parking lot maneuver, but at highway speeds, it feels a little bit twitchy. It's an odd mix of things that you wouldn't expect to go together. It's not a deal breaker on the car, but it's just something to keep in mind. Another thing to look out for, and this is one that's EV specific, is that the ES does not have one pedal driving. And in some EVs, you can basically let your foot off the gas and the car starts to brake through the regenerative brakes. In the ES, there's no way to turn it on. It just doesn't have it. Instead, it has these paddles on either side of the steering wheel. In this, it increases or reduces the regenerative braking. It's enough to slow the car, but it's not really enough to bring it to a complete stop. So you do still have to modulate the brake, even if you have the regenerative braking turned on as much as possible. The good news is that not everyone loves one pedal driving, and also the brakes in this car are tuned really well, especially for an electric vehicle. There's no weird grabbiness, there aren't any weird noises or something happening in the background. The car just stops, and that's not always something you find in an electric vehicle, and it's really, really well done in this Lexus. So as you'd expect from any modern vehicle, the Lexus ES comes with all the advanced safety systems that we like here at Consumer Reports. It's also the first vehicle to debut the Lexus Safety System Plus 4.0. What that means is the existing adaptive cruise control, lane centering assistance, those features are just better. They're more refined. To find out more details about our experiences with all of these features, safety and convenience alike, head to cr.org. The Lexus ES doesn't win any superlatives. It isn't the fastest EV, it doesn't have the quickest charging or the longest range, it's certainly not the least expensive, and its sedan form factor means it isn't as versatile as some electric SUVs. But what it does really, really well. It takes advantage of its electric drivetrain to be quiet. The suspension is supple and comfortable. It's enjoyable to drive, especially on long road trips. And the interior does a good job making minimalism still fashionable without making it too complex to use for the driver. Compared to other EV sedans, it really is special. It prioritizes comfort and quiet and livability. We would happily drive the new ES as long as its range would take us. To learn more about luxury sedans, EVs, and every other car that we test, including the new Lexus ES, head over to cr.org.